a podcast where I, Jason, talk about science fiction stuff, shows, movies, novels I'm reading, all about the amazing genre that is science fiction. And I felt as this would be a better way to talk about, in a more in-depth version versus my weekly watch articles over on the extendededition.com, where I talk about my movies I've watched that week or TV shows I watched that week. I figured that since I read a lot of science fiction stuff and I watch a lot of science fiction stuff and I am constantly, consuming science fiction based media, I figured this would be kind of a better way to talk about in a shorter podcast about those particular things I am consuming. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Jason, or Jay, from the Zach and Jay's Ticket Stubs podcast, which is a movie and TV podcast, mostly about movies and stuff, where we talk about movie news of that week, or movies we've been watching that week, or a topic, like, hey, favorite vampire movies, or best Spielberg movies, or something like that. That's kind of like the general gist of our podcast. And I figured to kind of just take the same idea and bring it over to a shorter version, short form, like half hour or so science fiction podcast, where it's just me, mostly, me just kind of rambling on about what I've been enjoying over the week. Maybe I'll have a guest or two at some point. Maybe Zach will come on. I'm sure he'll love to come on. He's a big fan of science fiction as well. Was kind of enjoying it. Kind of another way for me to talk about all this cool stuff. Because science fiction, like I mentioned earlier, I've mentioned it tons of times on the Ticket Stubs podcast, is that science fiction is one of the, or if not the greatest genre of anything ever. I think it's hard to debate. I can see why people would say a crime thriller, or crime, or true crime, or horror, or any other genre piece. I can see why people could push for those particular genres. But science fiction, man, science fiction poses questions that you couldn't normally pose in a thriller-based medium. Or, if we're watching a science fiction movie, you can get infinitely more levels of depth that make you think. And of course, you can do that in other genres as well. Not saying you can't see a coming-of-age movie that makes you, question something. But I think science fiction can do it in a really great way that makes you kind of like get the they can put, like, District 9 is a perfect example. It can comment on all these social issues and political issues, and you can see that, but it's pushing it to you in a way that you're not considering it on a human level. Like, you're looking at all the prawns or whatever, the aliens, and you're looking at the racism that's happening there, and the social injustice that's happening to the aliens in South Africa. And you're looking at it at a pure level of the aliens, but in reality, it's just Blomkamp talking about human life, which I think is what science fiction has always been about. That kind of stuff, and the parallels between human life and humans in our current day, or even the future and the fears that we have. So that's why I think science fiction is a perfect genre, because it can do all the stuff plus spaceships and lightsabers and guns, space blasters and space opera. So all these things that can happen, and robots and mechs and Gundams. And science fiction, man, is such an amazing piece of our lives that I think a lot of people don't. I know it comes in waves, right? It comes in waves. You have stuff like the pulp science fiction. You have like golden age era science fiction, where it's like, I feel like, I wasn't alive at the time, so I can't really obviously speak from experience, but I feel like it was a lot more respected and enjoyed at the time. We had these science fiction magazines and these pulp magazines that come out every week or every month. You have these nice short stories, and we don't really have that anymore, which kind of sucks, because I would love to have that. You have podcasts like Escape Pod and stuff like that, which is really great, but you don't have necessarily the print version, so you don't really see those, crappy, cheap made books, which are kind of cool, and they're nice to see, and they're nice to read, and they're consumable quickly and all that stuff. So now I'm just kind of rambling on about, but the real question is, though, guys, about science fiction. Spaceships and lightsabers and warp speed and all that kind of stuff. The real question is, though, is that when the aliens come down to Earth, and they will come down eventually because they're real, and if you don't think they're real, then maybe you should reevaluate your thinking. but there are, for sure, if you see any sort of Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever it may be, Mass Effect, a video game, sexy blue aliens, sexy aliens, when they come down to the planet, do you mate with the aliens? Is the real question. But is this the real? That's pretty much the real reason for this podcast existing, is to talk about cross species mating. If aliens are real, when they come down, if they were humanoid or not, I'm not going to judge. Do you cross the species, the genes? That's not really part of the podcast, but because Stargate SG-1. Stargate SG-1. I've been talking about Stargate SG-1 for the past couple of weeks on the podcast, the Ticket Stubs podcast, as well as on our website at theextendededition.com. And I've been slowly been pushing my way through the series, slowly been pushing my way through all 10 seasons. 10 seasons of SG-1, which is, I have said it before, SG-1 is it's an amazing show. It's a fantastic show. It got me into science fiction, It really kind of was one of those things that really, like, at the forefront of me becoming a fan of the genre. It was one of the biggest influences on me into getting into science fiction stuff. Of course, when I was younger than that, when I was young, I'm not that old, so when I was really young, I'm 22, Star Wars obviously got me into movies as well as into science fiction, but I didn't really consider Star Wars science fiction. I didn't really know that was science fiction. It was, especially because the original trilogy, even though it has aliens and it is a space series or whatever, it's one of the lesser science-y, fiction-y stuff that is out there when it comes to hard science fiction. It's a space opera, it's space fantasy. So, and especially the original trilogy, your aliens. Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi is the most science fiction of the three, I think. Because you have the aliens, way more aliens, and all the space battle scenes towards the end, So, the first Empire and the first one are definitely science fiction films. Don't get me wrong, but New Hope is, confined to the Death Star and stuff like that, and even the X-wing. The final X-wing battle, it's still obviously space battle, so that's science fiction-y. But SG-1, right? So my dad, who got me into a lot of stuff, if you ever heard me mention on the podcast, though, I would kind of just watch what he's been watching and kind of just consume that and then go watch it myself. And he loved the movie, the James Spader, Kurt Russell movie, which is a fantastic movie. And if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's an awesome movie. Not even including science fiction, it's just a great movie. And if you talk about science fiction movies, it's an amazing science fiction movie. So in '97, when they put out the show, the first season of SG-1, the show, he loved it. He watched it a lot, and he got me into. And like I said, he got me into a lot of TV shows, not just science fiction, but a lot of shows in general. I would watch what he watched, and I would kind of consume that myself afterwards. So stuff like even modern day stuff, like The Americans. He's watching The Americans first. I walk past, I'm like, what's that show? Oh, it's The Americans. That looks kind of cool. I want to check it out. Or stuff like, The Shield, where I didn't even know this show could be a thing. Or The Sopranos or something like that. He's been watching it, and then I would watch it later. He would give me the DVD set after he's finished watching it, and then I would check it out. And that was the same way with SG-1, and Back to the Future, stuff like that. So SG-1, I'm rewatching it, like I mentioned. I'm on season 2, almost done with season 2. I'm like in episode 17 or something like that, or 14 or 17, something like that. It's the episode where they meet the Tok'ra. They go to the Tok'ra, the home base, and Samantha Carter, Captain Carter, is talking to the guy who was the lover of the Goa'uld that possessed her. So if you don't know what Stargate SG-1 is, then I'm sorry. Check it out. That's the episode. It's a 2-part episode. I'm on that episode right now, and I am loving it, man. I am loving SG-1 so much. I loved it when I was watching it when I was younger, and I imagine that when I would rewatch it, I would have less love for it, or I would see more of the corniness or some of the flaws within the writing or the acting or whatever it may be. And I definitely noticed them more just I've grown as a film fan and a TV fan. I've grown and saw the flaws that are in it, but at the same time, while I do see them, they don't affect my enjoyment of SG-1 at all. It's like rewatching it I've never seen it before almost. It's been so long since I've seen the show, 10 years or so, it's been it's insane It's like I don't know, it's like watching it with fresh eyes, you know, and I'm really enjoying it. It's such a fun series, and I'm so excited to get to more worlds being explored. Because in the first season, they go to 22 episodes. They go to, I guess, 22 worlds or whatever. But they're at the end, towards the end of that season is when they really kind of get into the world politics of the universe or the galaxy or whatever. It's when they get more into the Gould, Apophis type of the battles. And then season 2, now they know that there's more Gould out there that they need to deal with. They have the horse guy, the ram horse guy, whatever, I forgot his name, and Apophis is still alive and stuff like that. So you have more that's happening. The SG-1 and Earth is becoming more and more important and vital to the universe, which is really cool. And I'm popping there, so I'm really sorry. I don't have a pop filter yet, so I apologize. But that's really cool to see, and I'm really enjoying once season 4 or 5 of SG-1 when it really gets like it kicks into high gear. A lot of stuff happening, and especially when you start seeing more of like the Asgardians. You learn more about the ancients and stuff like that. It's really, really great. And I mentioned in the podcast as well that I never liked Atlantis at all. So I think season 8 of SG-1 is when season 1 of Atlantis premiered, and I just was not into it. I don't know why I wasn't into it. I just wasn't. But I checked out the first few episodes, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was super sci-fi, you know, and I really like the guy who plays the main character, the main leader of the crew, the guy who plays the what's his name? Oh, Shepard, maybe, I don't know. Man, this name Mass Effect, I forgot his name. The leader, and then his crew is kind of cool. They don't have a Jaffa, which is nice, but they get Momoa later on, like OG Jason Momoa, Aquaman. So that's kind of cool. I'm excited to watch that show as well. But I have 8 more seasons of SG-1 to get to. And I haven't seen Stargate Universe at all. I haven't seen anything about it. I haven't checked out any episodes of it. So I have no clue if it's worth my time, if it's good or if it's bad. I read the premise for it, the plot, and it seemed kind of interesting, but I don't know how well it was received. So I don't know about that. We'll see what happens with that. But Stargate, I'm really, really happy with it. So I'll go ahead and I'll keep you updated on my SG-1 rewatch, because it's gonna be a while before I finish it, because it's so like 200 plus episodes of a show. It's gonna be a while until I finish it. But I'm really enjoying it. But on the novel front, on the book front, Ready Player One is a book that came out 3 years ago. One of the highest rated books I imagine in the past couple of years, especially when it comes to in terms of nerdy science fiction novels, fantasy novels. It's so well recommended, and everyone who's read it has been saying this book is awesome and this book is really good, and you need to read it if you like this type of novel, this type of series, this type of genre. Especially if you're a nerd fanboy or something. So under that recommendation, I went and I decided to buy it and to read it. And I was doing a thing where me personally, when it comes to novels, I like audiobooks a lot. I really like audiobooks a lot. I think because it's I find them very entertaining, because it's like an audio play. It's like especially like the Star Wars audiobooks, where they add in the sound effects, and the narrator can do really great voices, and he can do really great acting. Like the whole audiobook series of what is it? Not Fate of the Jedi, the one before that with Jason when he becomes Darth Caedus. Whatever that series is called. That entire series I listened to an audiobook, as well as read and mixed. I read them. I would go. So pretty much what I do is, okay. So I listen to audiobook when I'm in the car, and then when I'm at home, I read it like a physical copy. I read it. But the Star Wars ones, that whole Fate of the Jedi, the whole Betrayal is the first novel, whatever. That whole 7-book series, whatever, where Mara Jade dies. I would say spoiler alert, but it doesn't matter anymore because it's not canon. That whole series of that whole arc. His name is Mark Thompson, maybe Mark Thompson. I think the narrator, who's the big Star Wars guy now. I believe is his name. He is such an amazing narrator and just an amazing actor. He he gave every character that in that series a great voice, and I was like listening to him read the Thrawn trilogy was like, holy fuck, it was so good, especially his voice for Thrawn. Oh, it's so fucking on point. But it's just yeah. So Ready Player One. I bought it, got the audiobook, which is narrated by Will Wheaton, so I'm already like interested in it. I love Will Wheaton a lot. I think he's a great narrator. He read John Scalzi's Lock-In, and that was killer. That was a killer audiobook. I mean, the book was great too, but just like listening to Will Wheaton read it was like, this guy really adds flair to it. I really like it a lot. So Ready Player One, Ernest Cline, I believe 2011 is when it was published. Okay, I have gripes with it. I have a couple gripes. Nothing huge. I do recommend it to anyone who likes that genre of stuff. And if you're a nerd, I would totally check it out, especially if you're a fan of 80s stuff. Check it out, or video games, or whatever. Check out Ready Player One. You're going to love it. But here's my gripes. I feel like the first half of the novel, up to level 2, or whatever the first third of the book, is just a bunch of lists and a bunch of, hey, look, I'm a fanboy of 80s culture. And it's a lot of overabundance of that fanboying that I didn't think really added anything to the world building. That's just my opinion personally, so I don't know if people, maybe they felt differently about that, but I feel like for that first part of the series, the book, I was really kind of like, okay, I get it. You like, 80s movies a lot, and a lot of random stuff. I completely get it. That was an issue for me personally. It was like, okay, that's like, I get it. You're jamming facts down my throat that and I feel like also because it almost like he kind of like pandered to the audience almost a little bit, the reader, when he would be like explaining things that we have now. Like, it's a futuristic world, but you're explaining what we have currently. It's like, I get it, what you're doing, because it's the futuristic world. So for the main character, for Parzival, he's in his own mind, this is something different. This is not existing anymore. But for me, it's like, I have it already, so I get why he did that. So I don't know, maybe it's just me personally, or that makes any sense at all. So that's one of my issues I had with it, which is kind of like a lot of the facts were kind of just shoved to prove that he knew what he was talking about, which is great. I know I can tell that Ernest Cline really loves. He's really passionate about that, and that's great. My other issue or gripe with it was that Wade / Parzival, he fucking knew an impossible amount of information. And I get it's a fantasy novel and it's fiction, so I should have this belief, which I do. But I feel like he had like no trouble to get. Okay, hold on. I feel like he had zero struggles when it came to solving something. He didn't really have any issues. He knew everything. Granted, spoiler alert, when it came to solving the second gate, he didn't know, he couldn't figure it out, so his friends helped him. But then once he had the help, then he knew. And I understand that the character, he was like, researching and reading for like 5 years or whatever. I get that. But at the same time, to be able to recall all that information, it's like kind of like, bro, give the character a little bit of struggle, make him have to research something, or at least show him researching something before he finds the key or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but to be fair, to talk good about the novel, because I enjoyed it overall. I really enjoyed it overall. It has so much heart. It has so much care in it, and such passion. You can tell that Ernest Cline really, really loves this, the story, and the characters. Who at first I really didn't like Wade at all, but towards the end of the novel, I really, really cared for the guy. I really cared for Artemis and H, and it was a really great bonding experience and kind of a nice parallel to what's happening with current people, So it's that was really cool. I also really enjoyed all of the. It was a really fun novel, but they didn't show. Here's another gripe for me. I feel like they had no action sequences. No, they had a couple. The end had a couple action sequences. The final battle on the planet to get into the third gate area. That was a battle. That was cool. But I feel like the rest of the novel, there were 0 battles. A couple of things here and there, really quick one-off fights. But it's like it's an MMO based novel, so I figure you should have more dungeon crawling or action. He would kind of, there's a lot of character dilemma and narration from Parzival, explaining a lot of things and a lot of backstories about different characters, but would never show action scenes of Parzival actually like fighting and leveling up his character to level 99, or really showing the quests he goes on to get the gear, or him actually making his base, or whatever. He didn't go into in depth into that, which I get. The novel is pretty decent sized, so I understand that wasn't the primary focus of the story. But at the same time, I really would have enjoyed to see, hey, here's level 35 Parzival, trying to get into an area where he can do this quest, or go here and he's gonna buy his X-wing, or he's going to pay for his asteroid home base. I would like to see more of that, and there's no sequel happening at the moment. I know that his next sequel is called Armada, or is that the Andy Weir from The Martian? Okay, I'm pretty sure it's Armada, which is gonna be like more space, I guess a spacey traditional science fiction novel. I imagine from the title, which is cool, and I'm really excited for that novel to come out. Overall, Ready Player One is a fantastic, really fun book. A lot of character, a lot of heart, a lot of passion, like I mentioned before. And if I had to give it a rating out of 5, I'd give it a 4 out of 5. Really worth reading. Like I mentioned, the first third of the book can kind of pander to you, I think, a little bit, and kind of can show you a little. It can get kind of annoying if you're just like listening to it or reading it, and it's just a bunch of like, hey, here's random facts from the 80s that I know, and this proves to me that I know everything, and that kind of got old really fast. But once you hit level 2, and Parzival's a higher level, Wade's a higher level, and starts having more issues with Artemis and his friends, and you start seeing the struggle that happens with him for being number 1 on the scoreboard, then it gets really, really good, especially level 3. Level 3, the novel gets really, like, you don't want to stop reading it, you don't want to stop listening to it. And Will Wheaton's performance is awesome. Will Wheaton absolutely kills it and does great, because especially when he's mentioned in the book and Will Wheaton's reading his name in the book, it's like, oh, you kind of smile there and like laugh a little bit to yourself. But I really enjoyed that. Ready Player One is awesome. Moving on to another book that I'm reading now. All right, so I finished Ready Player One. I'm on to my next novel, my next science fiction book. I had options. I had goals. I had a list of books I wanted to read. I loved Lock-In, and I'm reading Old Man's War, that whole thing, in pieces. The Martian, I loved The Martian. It was really great. Excited for his next book. I wanted to read Shovel Ready. I bought Shovel Ready. I haven't read it yet. Ancillary Justice, I bought because the cover looked super cool, and I hear it's a really great space opera. I read a couple pages of it, just kind of stopped. It wasn't bad. I just put on pause for now, because I saw a book that's been out for a while as well, and I just never picked it up. But then I saw the cover at Books A Million. I was walking through, and I saw the cover for it. Looked so fucking cool. It looked so fucking cool. And then, oh man, hold on. Fucking Leviathan Wakes. James S.A. Corey, which is a duo. If you're into science fiction novels, you've already read this book or this series. And I've seen it, and I just never got into it because it was so, I don't know, I just wasn't at the moment I wasn't really into reading at the time. But Leviathan Wakes, man, the fucking blurb on the front says, quote, "It's been too long since we've had a really kick-ass space opera," end quote. George R.R. Martin, fucking Game of Thrones guy, said this book is kick-ass, right? So I know that, one, it's gonna be good because that guy can write. George R. R. Martin can write. So if he said this book is good, then I know it's good. 2, it's called Leviathan Wakes. That's kind of fucking rad. And 3, the cover looks awesome, right? The cover is sweet. The art is awesome, looks rad. And it's a space opera, so I'm going to read it. I'm going to check it out. So I'm reading this. I'm listening to it in the car, reading it in physical copy at home. I'm not too far into it. I'm only on like page like 45 or something, or chapter 3 or 4, whatever that chapter is. And so far, the plot is just starting. It's just starting to get into what's actually going to happen for the next 7 books or whatever. Sorry, that was really loud. So I'm just getting into the plot now. What's going to happen for the next 7 books or so. And I'm really enjoying it. It's super fun. For, like the writing is really well done. And the world seems really interesting. And I'm really enjoying it. It's a big book. It's a big book, man. It's a long novel. So to read like 7 of these, I know 4 are out, 5 are out, whatever. I don't know. I'm enjoying it. I'm excited to see where it goes. Excuse me. Because I know it's a space opera, right? When does it get opera-like? I know I'm not into it. Excuse me. I'm not too far into it, so I know I really can't complain about anything right now. That's only 45 pages into the book, which a book this big, that's nothing. That's just cracking the seal, but it's really well written. It's bouncing back between characters, whatever. So you follow the detective on Ceres, which is the belt colony in the asteroid belt. And then you follow Holden, who is the XO of ship, ice ship, ship. What's XO mean? Fuck, I forgot what XO means. He's like the exploration dude for a ship. So I know that it's going to get even better. I'm having fun time with it. I'm excited to get to more action. Excited to get to when the story kicks into high gear, kicks into turbo if you're a Power Rangers fan. Really loving that. Once I finish that, it's debatable about whether or not I move on to the next novel in the series, or kind of just go and read Ancillary Justice, because I hear that's really awesome, as well as Ancillary Sword, which is the sequel, I believe. I'm really enjoying it, so I'm excited to talk about it more next week or whenever. I'll probably be, a decent bit more into the novel, so I can probably talk more about it, as well as Stargate SG-1. So thanks guys for listening to this week's episode of J at Warp Speed, the official science fiction podcast of the extendededition.com. So this is going to be a weekly podcast, I believe, a weekly wrap up of the series I'm enjoying and consuming at the moment. Go to our website at theextendededition.com for movie articles and TV articles and stuff like that. If you're on YouTube and want to hear this podcast as well as the movie podcast, youtube.com/ticketstubs podcast. Subscribe, comment, like, all that business. Share with your friends if you're into that kind of stuff. We really appreciate it. And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Tumblr or on Instagram or whatever, it's J at Warp Speed is my username name thing. Check it out, guys. We appreciate it. Zach and I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys listening for this episode, the first episode of the J at Warp Speed podcast. Thanks a lot, guys, and check you guys back next week. Later.